On February 24th, 1978, 5 men left their homes in Yuba County, California for what was supposed to be a fun night out at the basketball game. Their team, the Yuba City 76ers, were playing the Chico State Wildcats. The men, all friends with a common love of the game, got into their car and drove to the college campus where the match would take place. But this was no ordinary basketball game. It was a rivalry game, and things were about to get bloody. It's me, and this is the Yuba County Five. Before we begin, a quick reminder to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And now let's go back to California in 1978. Our story begins on the evening of February 24th, 1978. After a long week of work, friends from high school decided that they needed a break. Gary Martin, 21, a mechanic. Robert Sales, 22, an auto parts salesman. Richard Wakefield, 18, a high school senior. And Bruce Gregory, 23, a construction worker, met up after work and made their way to the local bar. But they weren't the only ones looking for a good time. A man named Raymond Lee Copeland was also buying drinks and having a good time. In fact, he had been drinking all day in preparation for the big basketball game later that evening. You see, Copeland was the star player for the local team, the Yuba City 76ers. They had a heated rivalry with the Chico State Wildcats, and the tension was at an all-time high. Copeland was determined to win, and nothing was going to stop him. As the men drank and socialized, they discussed the upcoming game and how much they were looking forward to it. For many of them, it was just a fun game between rivals. But for Copeland, it was a chance to show off his skills and lead his team to victory. At around 9 p.m., the men finished their drinks and decided to head over to the college campus where the game was being held. As they approached the parking lot, they could hear the roar of the crowd and feel the excitement of the game. But there was something else in the air, too, a sense of danger and unease that they couldn't quite put their finger on. They parked their car and joined the throngs of people making their way to the entrance. As they walked through the gate, they were met with a sea of faces, most of them hostile and unfriendly. The rivalry between the two teams was intense, and the fans were known to get out of hand. But the men were undeterred and made their way to the bleachers. As the game began, the men settled into their seats and watched as the players took to the court. The atmosphere was electric with excitement and anticipation. The Yuba City 76ers were a formidable team, and the Chico State Wildcats were no pushovers. The first half of the game was a back-and-forth affair with both teams giving it their all. The men from Yuba County found themselves rooting for the home team, their voices hoarse from shouting and cheering. The game was close, and every point was crucial. The men leaned forward in their seats, their eyes never leaving the court. At halftime, the score was tied, and the men from Yuba County knew that the second half would be even more intense. They took a break to buy refreshments, but the tension was still palpable. The rivalry between the two teams ran deep, and the fans were not holding back. The men from Yuba County made their way back to their seats as the second half began. The energy in the crowd was electric, and the men could feel the tension building. The game was close, and the crowd was on the edge of their seats. With each team refusing to back down, the minutes ticked by, and the score remained close. The men from Yuba County watched intently, their hearts pounding in their chests. With only seconds left to play, the Wildcats made a last-minute basket, bringing them just 1 point behind. The buzzer sounded, and the game came to an end. The Wildcats had won by a single point. The men from Yuba County were stunned. They had been so close, so very close. But ultimately, the Wildcats had prevailed. The crowd erupted in cheers, and the men from Yuba County could only watch in disbelief. How could this have happened? They had been so sure of a victory. But as the celebrations died down and the crowd began to disperse, the men from Yuba County knew that they had to leave. The tension had been too much, and they didn't want to stick around to see what might happen next. They made their way to their car, their heads held low in defeat. But as they climbed into the car, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As they started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, they could feel eyes on them, watching their every move. They drove in silence, each man lost in his own thoughts about the game. But as they turned onto a dark and deserted road, the silence was broken by a sudden crash. The car had run out of gas. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere, but that wasn't the worst of their problems. As they stepped out of the car to investigate, they realized that someone was following them. They turned around and saw a group of men running towards them, their faces contorted with rage. The men from Yuba County jumped back into the car and tried to start the engine, but it was no use. They were trapped. The men outside the car began banging on the windows and yelling. The men inside the car could only scream in terror as they were dragged out of the car by the angry mob. And then the beating began. The men were punched, kicked, and beaten with whatever the mob had at their disposal. They tried to defend themselves, but there were too many of them and they were soon overpowered. Blood streamed down their faces and bodies as they were battered and bruised. When the men from Yuba County were finally left alone, they stumbled out of the car and collapsed on the ground. They were badly beaten, but they were alive. As the sun began to rise, the men from Yuba County managed to make their way to a nearby gas station. They were badly beaten and covered in blood, and those who saw them thought that they had witnessed a horrific car accident. But as the men explained what had happened to them, the gas station attendant called the police. The men had been attacked by a mob of angry fans, and they were lucky to be alive. The news of the attack spread quickly, and the police launched a manhunt for the perpetrators. But despite their best efforts, they were unable to find the men responsible. The men from Yuba County were left traumatized by the attack, and they struggled to understand why anyone would want to hurt them so badly. But as the days went by, the community rallied together to support the men, and they began to heal. The attack had been a tragedy, but it had also brought them closer together. In the aftermath of the attack, the men from Yuba County became known as the Yuba County Five, and their story was a reminder that sports rivalries can sometimes turn deadly. But despite the tragedy, the men from Yuba County refused to be defined by their attackers. They rebuilt their lives and became symbols of strength and resilience in the face of adversity. Now let's discuss the psychology of the mob mentality. Have you ever seen a group of people acting in a certain way that you just couldn't understand? Mob mentality is a phenomenon that has been studied for centuries, and it refers to the mindset of a group of people that can lead to irrational and often violent behavior. Have you ever wondered why people join mobs? Is it because they are mindless sheep, or is there a deeper psychological reason at play? Join us as we explore the psychology of mob mentality and try to answer some of these age-old questions. What do you think about the case of the Yuba County Five? What do you think caused the mob to attack them so viciously? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this case, be sure to check out some of our other videos which are all about criminal psychology. We cover everything from serial killers to cults and everything in between. So if you're interested in learning more about the darker side of human nature, be sure to check them out. Thanks for watching.